Making tax digital is the subject this evening. We've invited you here for this seminar because it's important and it's a little scary. Probably most of you ignored Making Tax Digital when it was first announced. I certainly did. But it's big. It's a very big thing. And if I can quote the European Union when they said they wanted ever closer union, Making Tax Digital is possibly an ever closer union between government and your data. So it's really quite important. Now, our two speakers here tonight are Ruth Corkin and Heather Elliot. Ruth is our own VAT specialist. She joined us last year. She sits on no less than 4 HMRC committees, and in addition, the Making Tax Digital Subcommittee. She's the National Technical Chair of the VAT Practitioners Group, and she sits on the VAT and Duties Subcommittee of the ICAEW. She's completely committed to committees, it seems. But Ruth, as you can probably also guess, is somewhat in demand by many of our clients as well. Heather Elliot is our guest from HMRC, and we're especially grateful to Heather and her colleagues for coming and joining us tonight. Not only is she an expert in VAT, but I'm going to repeat the title, which appears on the footing of her emails, because it's not for the faint-hearted. She is Making Tax Digital for Business, Customer Readiness and External Stakeholder Team. Heather is absolutely in the thick of it, therefore, and I look forward to the insight that she's going to provide. That is all from me. Can I introduce to you, please, Ruth Corkin, who's going to take the first session. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming. I'd like to say thank you to Heather as well for giving up her time. We also have Nell Hargrave, who is on the agent side of things, so if there are any accountants who complete VAT returns for their clients, she's possibly the person to talk to. And we also have Bryony Clinton from Tax Automation, who might be able to answer some of your questions on software, because she's involved on the software side of it. So a couple of extra special guests at the last minute. Okay. So as Jonathan referred to, I sit on the subcommittee for Making Tax Digital. Heather knows me very well, and I think one of her predecessors said that I am inclined to be vocal, and so I do speak my mind. But I have been worried about MTD for quite some time, because I know how VAT works, how VAT returns work, and they don't easily fit into the mould of digitalisation in the same way as other taxes might do. So here's a quick run through of my thoughts, and I'm sure Heather will have some thoughts on what I say, so well, let's get going. So a quick sort of introduction. Before you were invited to this seminar, how many people had some awareness of Making Tax Digital? Okay. And how many of you use your accounting software to file your VAT return? Okay, that's probably going to be borne out in my facts and figures. So I work for an accountancy firm. We do like our facts and figures. So the first one is that 95% of VAT registered businesses file their VAT return via the online account. And I'm sure that goes for all of those that don't use their software. But of these, only about 12% of taxpayers or their agents file using the accounting software. So there's quite a few of us that don't do that. There was a recent HMRC survey which said 20% of taxpayers knew something about Making Tax Digital, and in the same survey, 72% said they will probably need help from their advisors to get it to work. So we've got quite a, sort of uphill struggle, but a bit of work to do. And the other thing that came as a bit of a shock to me is that not all of the well-known software packages are working with HMRC for Making Tax Digital. So that is going to cause its own issues. So what is Making Tax Digital? Well, for that period starting on or after the 1st of April 2019, you will need to file your VAT returns via accounting or other compatible functional software. So that's the first term that we'll get to grips with later. All VAT registered persons which have a taxable turnover in excess of the VAT registration threshold, which is currently 85,000, will need to file under the MTD rules from that date for their VAT period. So that is quite a few. It includes overseas branches, charities, local authorities, academy schools, and, you know, sort of normal, what I would call normal traders. So there was a rumour that charities wouldn't have to. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, that charities will be exempt for the other taxes, but not VAT.
That was part of the original proposals, but for VAT, if they're VAT registered, they have to comply with MTD as long as their taxable turnover is above the limit.
So that's come as a bit of a shock to some of the charities that I've spoken to. The existing HMRC portal will not be available to submit your VAT returns if you have to file under MTD. I believe it will still be open to file your EC sales list. From the first consultation, I remember the EC sales list was potentially going to come under MTD, but I don't think it is now. So there will also be some new record-keeping requirements in respect of what I would call a digital VAT account, and I'll show a mock-up of something that I've done. It is by no means pretty, and it is very, very basic, but it gives you an idea of the sort of things that may need to go in there. And data extracted from your accounting software will have to have digital links so that there's little or no manual intervention in the preparation of your VAT return. So, certain taxpayers, VAT groups and multi-academy trusts are the first ones that spring to mind, but there may be companies with divisions, or there may be businesses that have diverse activities that come under the umbrella but account separately, so some landed estates, for instance. They won't be able to file their VAT returns from their accounting software. At the moment, as far as I am aware, there is no accounting software that will do a VAT group return. You have to do it using a spreadsheet at the moment. So they will need bridging software or their own functional compatible software. And third-party data, and there are quite a few people have third-party data. Anyone with a property investment company may have a property manager that will give them information on the rents received and the expenditure. I know businesses in the tourism trade that have external booking agents who feed them information. You'll need to be able to feed those into your accounting system digitally so that everything is linked. And any adjustments made to the figures generated by the accounting software, again, allocation of input tax if you're partly exempt, will eventually need to be fed back into your accounting software before you file your VAT return in order to complete it, or be submissible by another means, for example, bridging software. So the overall aim is for there to be no or minimal human intervention in the VAT return process. So for a lot of us, there's a lot of manual processes going. I've had clients who do absolutely everything manually. They take their general ledger VAT figure, they add things to it like reverse charges, and then they file manually. So they're going to struggle a bit. So for the first 12 months, there's going to be a soft landing period to enable businesses to get those digital links into their accounting system. Partial exemption adjustments at the moment will still need to be done in a spreadsheet or something similar so that you can, actually sort of play around with the figures, for want of a better word. It's probably not a term HMRC like, but they know what I mean. And I have actually mocked up...
I think it's the word
check, yes. I have done a mock-up, which I'll show you in a minute, of a very simple VAT group that is partly exempt and the number of tabs of a spreadsheet that it has just to get its VAT return done. Then you've also got other taxes to be brought into MTD once VAT works. So it won't be before 2020, but I assume HMRC are going to want it as soon after 2020 as possible. And for those of you that are self-assessed and also on things like cash accounting or even the flat rate scheme, the various limits are different for each of the taxes, so that's going to cause a challenge. And that may mean that you need extra software for those other taxes, or it may mean that there's some alignment of the thresholds. So we have some exemptions. The following types of person are exempt from MTD. If you're VAT registered but under the VAT threshold, you don't have to use MTD. You can elect to use it, but you don't have to be. If you're insolvent, you've probably got other things to worry about, but you don't need to be in MTD. Taxpayers who have a religious issue with the use of technology. Now, I've never come across a single one of those, but I do understand they exist. If you've got no internet access, sometimes mine at home can be a bit dodgy, but I don't think that would qualify me for exemption. Taxpayers who have to file from an overseas jurisdiction where they have very complex firewalls. So anybody dealing in Russia or China will know that their internet rules and their internet firewalls are actually virtually impossible to get through. So if you're in that situation or your parent is, then you may be able to get an exemption. And the elderly, infirm and disabled taxpayers if they have no other means of filing. So, functional compatible software. I know Heather will go into this in much more detail. It has to be able to record and preserve electronic records in an electronic form. It has to provide information to HMRC from the electronic records to HMRC's platform via the API platform, which is Applications Programming Interface. And every time I use the term API, I have to look it up because I can never remember what it means. Basically, it's the application sort of software that you have on your phone to liaise with your bank and things like that. So it's not completely new technology, but it is being used in a new way. And it also has to be able to receive information from HMRC using the same API technology. So that is actually set out in the legislation as a definition. And only software which has been tested by HMRC can be used to file your VAT return. There will be a list, I understand, of software providers at some point later in the year once the testing has been done. And it has just started, I believe, hasn't it? So we are on that road. Okay, what if I use spreadsheets? I've mentioned spreadsheets quite a bit, and originally in the consultation, spreadsheets were going to be a no-no, but there has been a bit of a U-turn on that because of the amount that it's used in VAT. So you can use a spreadsheet to file your VAT return provided it fulfills the requirements of functional compatible software. So your spreadsheet needs to be able to keep the records electronically, communicate to and from HMRC. That, as far as I can tell, is actually fairly uncharted territory in the software world. So, you know, sort of watch this space, I think, for that. And then going back to VAT groups and complex businesses, they are still going to need some way of filing from their spreadsheets onto the HMRC platform. As far as I'm aware, there is no API-enabled spreadsheet available for VAT, but I understand there might be one in the self-assessment sandbox at the moment, so maybe it will be able to be utilised. And the software may not be available until late summer, autumn 2018, depending on how long the testing process goes on for. So digital links is something I've referred to throughout my talk, and a digital link, there's a mandatory digital link, which is prescribed in law, so it's a link between your sales and your VAT account, etc. And then you've got other digital links, which is where you have other data feeding into your accounting software. There's no definition of a digital link. There is a draft notice floating around at the moment, which I have seen sight of, and there is a bit more explanation of what that is, but at this point in time, it's difficult to say what a digital link is. Spreadsheets from a third party would be a digital link, but you have to be able to import the data, so that's where your digital links need to be up to date. And some adjustments, such as your partial exemption adjustment, I think can still be journaled in manually, as long as you know what to do with the journal. So for some people, the term journal might be a complete and utter mystery. And for others, they might think, oh no, I always get those wrong, which is the camp I fall in sometimes. So what should taxpayers be doing? It's not a time for complacency. It's we're less than a year away now. You need to check with your existing software providers what they're doing for making tax digital. Because at the moment, there's no other way to actually find out what's happening. Make sure that they are engaged, that they are going to have a product or can refer you to a product. Check the cost, because it's not going to come free of charge, and HMRC are not going to pay you, to file your VAT return, so you are going to have a cost. And check what access you're going to have to your old data, how it's going to be copied across. I don't know about you, but every time I've done an accounts program migration, there's always been a few little hiccups along the way. So you need to make sure that you know what that's likely to be. And some providers, I think, are going to use this to move people into cloud and internet-based software and away from the desktop-based software. So you may need to find an alternative way of storing your data. You'll need to consider whether you need any additional software, bridging software, API-enabled spreadsheets, etc., because your VAT return may not be able to be filed through the accounting software. And check where your manual adjustments are so you know where you need to put your digital links in. So it's quite a good long process to do, because we all do it as second nature when we're preparing a VAT return these days. we don't actually think about what our manual processes are. The other thing that perhaps you should think about doing is undertaking an audit of your underlying data. This is just the tip of the iceberg for making tax digital. I'm sure as time goes on, there'll be more and more data that will be required. And so therefore, now's the time to make sure you're happy with it so that when you do have to submit more data, you know that it is as accurate as you can get it to be. So check your tax codings, check your nominal codes, check that they're not going to cause you any issues. And if you're considering a change of accounting software because you're coming to the end of your financial year, think about what that means when you come to do Making Tax Digital, because you may end up with 2 accounting programs in 1 year, and you need to be able to make sure that you can actually transfer the data between the 2. So Making Tax Digital the future, these are just thoughts off the top of my head. We may see an increased demand for data. I'm sure the government would like an increased demand for data. Flip side of that is we might get to see more of what HMRC holds in data for us through our online account. Who knows? Will it be real time? It may be real time going forward. Certainly that's happening in the PAYE sphere. For the other taxes, there may be a change of accounting basis. So as you know, VAT returns tend to be in quarters, and a lot of them tend to be the calendar quarter. For other taxes, we have a tax year running from the 6th of April to the 5th of April, so there will be some crossover there. According to the consultation document response, there's the potential loss of your extra 7 days to file and pay when the other taxes are mandated, which means you've got a shorter filing period, something to be aware of. Maybe use of data mining by HMRC, so maybe we should be looking at data mining to make sure that everything is correct and accurate, and actually we should make sure it's correct and accurate. And who knows, blockchain may overtake it at some point in the future. So, we are really geared up for this. We can arrange a meeting with you to discuss what needs to be done and, you know, where we can actually add value to it. We can identify where in your processes you will need your digital links. We can check if your digital software is able to cope with the transition. We can do a deep cleanse of your data to make sure it's nice and clean. We can look at training internally for people so that everyone within the company is aware of what MTD is. We can do a helpline service if you've got quick and easy sort of questions that you need answering. Or we can do the whole thing for you. And we also, if you've got UK subsidiaries or overseas parents, we can look at how it affects them. So that is for me, and I will hand over to Heather.
Thank you.
Who will probably tell me I'm telling you a load of rubbish.
You don't need to introduce it, do you?
No,
I've introduced you already.
I'll just jump up and carry on. Thank you for inviting me, Ruth. It's really good to be here with you today in such splendid surroundings. And it's good to be able to talk to you. So if you want to speak to me at the end, by all means, come and chat to me. I'm grateful to Jonathan for introducing me as a VAT expert. I think you misread my pen portrait, which says my background is in VAT. Not quite the same as being an expert, but I started VAT straight from school, visiting small businesses to check on their VAT returns. And I am quite amazed how some things have not changed a bit since those days. So there still, I believe, exist carrier bags full of invoices. Shoe boxes are a step up from a carrier bag. But other things have changed so much, haven't they? You know, we were talking about our phones before, and we were laughing at BlackBerries because they're so antiquated. And you can do so much with your phone now. That world and our world has changed so dramatically. And yet some things to do with our accounting haven't changed. And Making Tax Digital is really taking a big step forward to bring the tax affairs into the 21st century. Oh, that's me. So we'll click on. I'm going to cover a lot of the things that Ruth has already covered, and I think it will be useful actually because a number of you said, or a lot of you said, you hadn't done a great deal of thinking about Making Tax Digital, so hearing it twice will help it sink in, and you'll hear it perhaps in a different way, but we will probably be saying similar things today. So these are the things that I wanted us to have a look at this evening. Why are we making tax digital? What's changing and who's affected? How to subscribe to the new service and join the pilot, digital record keeping, which we've talked about, submission of VAT returns, and then we'll have questions at the end. So is that what you were expecting to cover? Yes, you're in the right place then. That's always good, isn't it? So why are we making tax digital? It's about helping businesses to get things right from the go and to reduce tax loss through ever. We've talked about a digital future, all the things we accept nowadays, and we recognise as HMRC that a lot of the services that you demand from us, and we can talk about customers later, are probably not up to the standard that you would expect and you would want them to be, and you would want us to be more up to date and up to speed. We've had to go to the government to ask them for investment to do that, and the government have said yes, you can have that additional investment because we have demonstrated a track record of improving and doing things for our customers, but we also have to recognise that there has to be an impact on the tax gap, the tax that is lost through error, and those two things are brought together. And we also know that accounting software exists. It's already something that a lot of you are using. There's a very dynamic market out there. Lots of people, we've got a developer here with us. So software exists already, and it's about HMRC being switched on to what is already available there and us working together to bring those two things together. I'm going to challenge one of your statistics because you said 95% of VAT returns. I think it's 99% of VAT returns. So the vast majority of people file their VAT returns online. This is just some statistics. You don't particularly need to know or acknowledge those, but it was recognised when we originally announced making tax digital that actually what we're doing is the next natural step in terms of all the things that are already happening. And this is the vision that we have, that we will become the most, what is it? It's making fundamental changes to the way the tax system works and making it more effective, efficient, and then that key point again, making it easier for taxpayers to get things right. Because we recognise that most people want to get it right. Most people don't want to do it wrong, then they want assurance that they have done it right. They want to be confident that what they have done is going to produce the right results and that we won't trouble them because they've done it right from the start. And I'm guessing that's what all of you would want, that we wouldn't come and trouble you. Yeah, so that's what we're aiming for here. There was an article in the Financial Times a few weeks ago, I don't know if any of you saw it, suggesting that the timetable for making tax digital had actually changed and we were going to delay things. I just need to get it out there that that's not the case. The timetable hasn't changed at all. There was suggestion because HMRC are looking at all the things that we're doing because of Brexit and reprioritising some things. There's a suggestion that making tax digital would be one of the things. It's not. It's one of our key programmes. The legislation has been laid. We're working on the draft notice that Ruth mentioned earlier. The pilots are in place and our programme and our timetable hasn't changed, so I just need to get that out there. And this was a statement that the FST made some weeks ago about being ready for the change, and that's why you're here today, to be ready, which is great. Making tax digital is about capturing all your transactions in record-keeping software in as near to real time as possible. That's a really important thing. In terms of looking at closing the tax gap, in terms of the errors, unintentional errors that are made, keeping your records accurately as near to the transaction as possible is really important. So for anybody dealing with income tax, if they move to making tax digital, they will have to do quarterly updates, and so that will sort of force some discipline around not leaving everything till the last week in January. Do you still get people giving you stuff in the last week of January? Yeah. So there's no set standard about what as near to real time is as possible, but the expectation is that record keeping will be part of your normal business activities and you will do it as you go along, and the software should help you to do that. And it can be on any device, so that might be on a computer in the office, it could be on your smartphone or your tablet, really depending on your needs and the needs of the business. And as Ruth said, the summary updates will come to us via this API-enabled software. And what the APIs are, they're just computer languages that allow your computers to talk to our computers and to send the information directly through to us. So rather than you logging onto a portal and keying things in, you will be doing things with your software, and the software will automatically talk to us as part of the process. when you tell it to. So it's not a matter of us having hands into your data and your software. It's at the point you decide to submit the information to us, you submit it and the API will send it to us. And I put application programming interface on my slides because I forget as well what it stands for. So that's what we mean by making tax digital. So I'll quickly go through some income tax stuff. So there are, as I say, there are changes for income tax. We're moving to quarterly updates, and the update will be compiled by the software, pulling the information together from the digital records. It will be a summary only, so it's not a matter of you sending everything to us. It is just the summary data, and again, it will be sent through the API software. And then there'll be end of year activity, and that is what will finalise the tax position for the year, and that will remain due on the 31st of January, and at that point it will become liable to our normal compliance checks. So the updates that you send throughout the year, they won't be subject to scrutiny as the end of year activity will be. That's just keeping everything in order, keeping on top of things, and it will also allow us to reflect back to you your tax position throughout the year, but it will of course be an estimated tax position throughout the year. That's that difference between VAT. You're not submitting a quarterly return, you're just giving us update information. Now it may be for some businesses those 4 quarterly updates actually are all they need for the whole year, but for some businesses they will maybe need to make some adjustments at the end of the year. So this is the income tax pilot. Are any of you aware that it's possible to join the income tax pilot now? Okay, so if you wanted to, you could go to gov.uk and have a look at that and sign up for the income tax pilot. Ruth's spoken about software availability. We have 2 software developers whose packages have successfully tested in income tax, and they are available. A company called Iris and a company called Rhino. Now Iris, you're perhaps familiar with the name, they're well established. Rhino are brand new to the market, and our experience is that we are getting new companies coming and doing software, and we've got the existing businesses that have been there for a long time, well established. It's quite a dynamic market. We have got more interest in VAT from the software developers because clearly that's mandated next year, and that's definitely going to be happening for everybody at the moment. Income tax is still on a voluntary basis. If we were clever with technology, I could go to the internet and have a look at those. Perhaps we'll do that in the Q&A if there's time. So for VAT, what's changing for VAT? So again, the VAT return will be completed from the software by pulling the information together to produce the VAT return, and it will come to us through the API software. Some things aren't changing, so you will be sending us the 9-box VAT returns, and the frequency and the payment won't change. That's not changing for VAT, unlike income tax. And any eligibility for special schemes will remain. So if you do annual accounting, flat rate scheme, any of those, that's not changing. Those facilities will still exist. If you do monthly returns, you'll just do them monthly by MTD. So who's affected? So this is the really important date in bold on the screen, April 2019. That's the date you've got to have in your mind. So it's for all VAT registered businesses with a taxable turnover above the VAT threshold. So a lot of VAT registered businesses are voluntary registered. They're below the threshold. They don't need to. If they choose not to do MTD, they don't have to, but we are going to encourage them to do that because we think there's benefits to them and to us as well. So if you are over the VAT threshold and you're VAT registered, you have to do it from April next year, and it will be from the first VAT return that starts in April. Yeah. So if you work out in your head when that is for you, so I don't know when your quarterly returns are due, but it'll be the April, May, June, so you won't have to, you've got until August, yeah, the first week in August. Yeah, so if your VAT returns start 1st of April, the first one that will be due will be August, but clearly, please don't leave it until the first week in August until you start thinking about it. But that's the deadlines that we're working to. And the threshold, it's tied to the VAT threshold at the moment. So if there's any changes in the VAT threshold, then that eligibility will change. As I've said, smaller VAT registered businesses can join if they wish, and as Ruth said, nothing else will be mandated until 2020 at the earliest. She also mentioned some exemptions, so I've got a slide on those. She mentioned insolvency, the religious grounds for people who they're practicing members of a society. You can't just decide to have a religious objection to MTD. That's not likely to be accepted. And then it's for any other cases where it's not reasonably practical. Now, Ruth did give you a list there. I would say that there are no hard and fast rules when it comes to mandation, so exemption. Each case will be considered on its merits, and you will need to contact our VAT helpline to discuss that. I'm guessing by the fact that you're here in this room, you're expecting that you're going to do it. So age might be a reason why you would find it impractical to do making tax digital, but there is no age limit, and we're not saying above a certain age you don't have to. However, a business that's well established, perhaps the owner's approaching retirement, feeling they're not going to continue for much longer, might want to sell the business or retire within the next 18 months, would it be reasonable to expect them to implement MTD? Maybe not. So it's that sort of thing. Again, with a disability, we are looking to make as much working with the software developers in terms of making the software accessible, because there are lots of people in business who have a disability and they want the software to be accessible to them. So again, there is no blanket suggestion that if you have a disability that you would be exempt from MTD. But it may be that somebody with a disability would find it difficult. So that's where we are with exemptions. And as I say, contact the VAT helpline to discuss that, and sooner rather than later if you think that might be an issue. So aside from the exemptions, we do provide a range of support, and clearly the fact that you're here at a Hillier Hopkins event means that you will perhaps turn to them for advice or another advisor, and so we recognise that that is going to continue, and none of this is intended to disrupt those relationships, and we would expect that to continue. But for people who want to come direct to us for advice, we have guidance, we've got helplines so you can phone up, we've got web chat. Now, have any of you used any of the web chat online? Yeah, did it work for you? Yeah? Yeah, I find what's useful is it only advertises itself when there's somebody there to do it. So the link will come up and say, do you want to chat? And you can click on it and chat. If they're too busy, it says it's not available. Yeah, and it's quite useful if you're doing other things at the same time, isn't it? Yeah. Not that any of us are multitasking. Yeah. Social media, so we use Facebook and Twitter, and usually that's about announcing things, drawing attention to things. So we advertise, for example, the videos that we've got. We've got a YouTube channel. I think we've got a million views on our YouTube channel just this week. So we're having a little bit of a celebration on that. So go and have a look at our YouTube channel, see if there's any of the videos there that you would find helpful. And we do online learning, so we have talking points webinars where we present something like this and you listen to it online, and as I've mentioned, videos as well. Assisted digital, so that's where we recognise that there will be some people who will struggle, and our helplines are already expert in identifying the level of support that people need, and so they're used to asking them questions to identify where they're at, and then depending on what their needs are, we'll define the level of service and support that we have to provide with them. In the very extreme cases, we have our needs extra support service, and they will perhaps take longer to talk to people over the phone. They'll perhaps refer them to other organisations who can help them, but ultimately they will do a face-to-face visit if that proves to be necessary. And we also recognise that friends and family are really important, and we will do what we can to facilitate friends and family helping as well. So that's the rough timeline where we're at. I'm conscious of time, so the important box there is April 2019. April 2019, keep that in your head. So I'll tell you a bit more about the pilot. So that has already started. So we were doing some testing previously in a test environment. We're now in what we call the live environment. So the people who are doing the testing at the moment are doing it for real, and we do that by invitation only. And the reason for that is so we can control it very carefully, and we'll walk the volunteers through the process. And what we're doing is we're testing that the information they send to us is exactly the information that we receive at our end, and making sure all those things go through. And Bryony might want to tell you about her experiences, or maybe not, but she has been involved in some of our testing. And so you're very closely supported. And once we identify some of the things that need fixing and changing, then we roll it out to more people, we bring more people on. So we don't move forward with the testing until we're confident that each stage is working, and we start with smaller businesses and more straightforward businesses. Part of the reason for that is because we're making big changes to our back-end systems. So you mentioned about us being able to give you, or did you say it, Ruth, about give you more information? So currently, if you're involved in a number of taxes, your information will be kept on different computers, depending what the tax situation is. We're looking ultimately to having, on your business tax account, the ability to see everything in one place, much as you would do for your bank account, where you've got your different accounts, savings, current account, credit card, whatever you have. And so we are moving into one computer platform for that. But we're migrating things over gradually. So we can only accept into Making Tax Digital the businesses that we've migrated onto that new platform. So we're coordinating those two things. And also you will need software to join the pilot as well. Talking about the software, it's really difficult for me to tell you more about the software and give you more confidence, so it might be helpful, Brian, if you talk to people about the things that you're aware of. I can't tell you about any of the people that we're dealing with because it's commercially confidential. All I can say to you is that we are dealing with a wide range of developers, certainly for VAT, as I say, from the new startups through to the well-established, well-recognised businesses. And they're confident that they will have a range of products available to suit different needs in the marketplace. As I say, it is very competitive. So, the more that as they are tested and we produce them online, you'll be able to see what's available. Clearly, an established business won't want one of their competitors to be ahead of the game for them. So they're looking to provide the different packages and services as soon as they can. Once we have tested them successfully, so we know that the APIs work, we'll then advertise them on our website on gov.uk. Now, I would imagine that a lot of you already use software, so you won't particularly be going to look for something that's on our page. The best thing you can do is talk to your existing provider about what their plans are, and find out from them when they are identifying either upgrading the products that they've already got so they'll be compatible, or some of them we know are producing new products as well. So I think I've covered everything on that slide. So these are the sort of pages that you'll see when you go to gov.uk. That is what they're like, and you'll see there's the links on them, and you'll just click through the various pages and that will take you through to the subscription service. Those are just examples. So a bit more about digital record keeping. I mentioned the possibility to do phones. For some very small businesses, that might be all they want or all they need. Clearly, for a more sophisticated business, they will want to have something perhaps more substantial than that. It does include spreadsheets. We've talked about that, and it will calculate the return and send it to us. So we've mentioned the draft VAT notice. I'm going very quickly, I know, aren't I? Are you still with me? It's getting late in the day. So in the draft VAT notice, you will be able to look at the requirements for VAT record keeping. Now, I've got draft on these because we published a draft notice when we consulted on it back over the winter. And we took a lot of feedback on the draft notice because people gave us examples of things that wouldn't work or they wanted clarifying. And so we have accepted some of the comments that people gave to us, and we've changed some of the record keeping requirements as a result of the consultation that we had, the feedback people gave us. So, for example, if you think about partial exemption, if you've got supplies, the original intention was that when you recorded the invoice, the input tax, you would record the amount of input tax that you are going to claim on that invoice. Obviously, if you're in a partial exemption situation, you may not know at the point you receive that invoice whether you're going to claim all of it, none of it, or some of it. So we've accepted that change, and that is something you could do after the event. You can make the adjustment after the event. But basically, this is the information that you will need to keep. And I would imagine if you're using record-keeping software already, it already does this for you or prompts you to do this. And there's more information there. Okay, I think the important one there, the adjustments. So the adjustments, if whatever reason you need to make adjustments, you just need to record in your software the total of the adjustment. You don't need to have the calculation as part of your digital records. I think if you think of it in terms of the your inputs and outputs, it's about starting from the base record through to the VAT return. How does that data flow all the way through? And some of your adjustments aren't actually part of that flow through. I've got some examples of that later that I'll cover. So this is an example of an existing business that already uses software to record their sales and purchases, and they use a spreadsheet to calculate the return, and then they have bridging software to submit the return to us. And all of the links in that situation should be digital links. Another business uses software, they record everything in there, it calculates the return and it submits the return to us. But alongside that, they use a spreadsheet to record their fleet of cars, and they use that to calculate their fuel scale charges. Now, it's okay for them to just take the total of that adjustment and type it into their accounting software. But as we've said on the screen, if it can be automated, that reduces the opportunity for making errors, okay? So that's a slightly different scenario there. And then this third example, and Ruth spoke about this, about the disparate systems that you might have. Businesses that perhaps have got different divisions, or they've been merged, or the farm estates is another good one where they've got all sorts of different things going on. They could have different packages. So this example, there's 3 different packages that are used to record the sales and purchases and calculate the return and submit it to us. But they have a spreadsheet to collate all the information together for everything. And in order to submit that to us, they will need to have some bridging software. Now, we recognise that for a lot of businesses, certainly the bigger businesses that have got lots of different things going on, the most difficult bit is going to be the digital links. And so we have identified that we probably need another 12 months for those businesses to get ready for this. So they must still submit to us through the API software. They must still keep the digital records, but this digital links between the different packages, we're giving what we describe as a soft landing. Some people are calling it a period of grace. But that is up until April in 2020. So if you haven't got digital links between the packages, you need to get them in place for 2020. So that's the example. So in this third example, that software that collates everything together, for the first 12 months, we accept that would have to be done manually, but from then onwards, it would have to be done digitally. And in our notice, in the VAT notice that I've mentioned already, that's still in draft, there's a description of what we mean by digital links, but that has still to be refined. So we're taking feedback on that point so we can give a more precise definition of what we mean by digital links. In simple terms, though, I think, so for somebody like me who's not techie, it's about it happening automatically without any manual intervention, without you changing stuff. Now, we recognise you will still need to do adjustments or mess about with things, I think was your expression, check things. We know that's still going to happen, but this flow of data, where data just flows through, the ultimate end game is for that to start from the invoices and flow right through to the end. But clearly, where adjustments have to be made, there will have to be intervention. Okay, voluntary update. So this is, if you want to, your software will allow you to give us more information. So if you remember at the beginning, I said for VAT, it's just the 9 boxes for the VAT return and it's summary data, and you are in control of sending that to us. We don't go and grab it off you. You still have to submit it to us, but there will be a facility within your software to give us more information if you choose to do so, if that would be helpful. Now, the bottom line talks about aligning VAT and income tax. So for some businesses who are doing both, and as Ruth mentions, their tax periods may not align, this update might help facilitate that and make that easier. But it will allow you to give us a bit more information, which will allow us to do some more detailed checks and may reduce the need for us to come and ask you about things. So there are some...
We can't find additional information. There is no way of
Okay.
finding anything other than the 9 boxes
Okay.
4 or 12 times a year.
Okay, so this is in the notice and the details that are in there. So in terms of the technology and where we're up to with that, I'm not up to speed with that, but this is a provision that's...
You can't file voluntary.
Okay. Okay, so, and getting ready. And I think just to reinforce what Ruth has already said, you know, talk to your software provider, talk to your accountant, find out what they can do for you, decide what it is that you want to do for yourself, and work out, you know, what's the best way to use your resources, to use their expertise, what do you need them to do for you. If you already have an existing HMRC contact, which for some of the larger businesses they will, talk to them as well, and then think about taking part in the pilot. As I say, the information for the pilot is on gov.uk. I think that's all I wanted to cover.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you to our speakers, to Heather and to Ruth. Thank you very much.